Alright, saying it's 65 in here. I've had the thermostat set to 73. So we've got a problem with the furnace. Checked the breakers and fuses down here. There is right here, this black one appears to be a circuit breaker style fuse, but that's okay. All the controls for the air conditioner, because this particular thermostat is hooked into the air conditioner, that's all fine. I went underneath and I checked power to the furnace, because there's a 12-volt lead, and that was fine. Now, while I was down there, I noticed something interesting. I found a flashing light. Now, turns out I can see that flashing light from here. Now you can see it. There's 1 second, or 1 flash, then about a 3-second pause, and then a 1-second flash. When I looked at the user's manual, what this said is that's a limit or cell switch problem, so I need to get to that. So let's take you down. Let's take you down into the underbelly to see what we're looking at. Alright, so in here, this is behind, I'm in the basement. There's this door, the furnace, there's a water heater, a mess of wires. As we get in here, you can see in there, there's the red flashing light that we could see from the cabinets inside. Now, to get to this whole thing, it's going to be a bear. We've got hoses in the way for the pipes, all the connections for all the various vents in our rig. But what I can see, and this was attached to the ceiling, it wasn't just laying on there. I pulled it down because I was trying to get to access these connectors, which have, the various 12 volts. This is the positive 12 volt, negative 12 volt, and then the 2 thermostat wires. And so what this tells me is, because we're getting that red flashing light, the thermostat and the relays and everything that goes along with that are probably working right. I tested the voltage across these wires, and it was right in line with where my batteries are. We are plugged in, so my batteries are like 13.1 or whatever volts. That's what I had here. So what I think I'm going to try to do is go in from the other side. Let's see if I can get an angle here. Go in, cut out that wall from the inside of the cabinet, and then see if I can access the main control panel from that side, and maybe the cell switch and some other items from that side. Looks like the wires do in fact go across to that other side, so I'm hoping all of the electronics is accessible from inside that. Luckily this stuff is pretty thin, so I'm just cutting at it with a utility knife. There we go. What do I have? Not access to a whole lot, but we'll see what I can get to. Alright, so cut the hole in the back of the cabinet. You can see that's the bundle of wires that connects the 12 volt power as well as the thermostat. I see a reset switch down here. I think that's what it says. Yep, reset. Well, that's going to do me any good, but it's there, so I'll try it. After pressing the reset button, the flashing light is returned. There it is. Beep. So, on to the next thing. Trying to get to this limit switch, wherever that is. Alright, I'm going to see how this thing is secured in here. It's strapped down there. That's the propane line. I wonder if I can at least unstrap this and a little bit slide it back. And back in the underbelly, there's your furnace. So there's a screw there and another one over there. I'm going to try to pull those out and see if that gives me enough to be able to slide this thing, or whether I'm going to have to actually try to get that strapping off as well. Alright, so I got that out. And there's all the electronics. So hopefully now, I think that's the exhaust. Hopefully now I can get in there far enough to reach this limit switch and whatnot. Alright, so this here is the sail switch. When the fan turns on, it causes this little piece to create a contact between these two terminals. So I'm going to check to see if this component is working the way it's supposed to. And it looks like it is. So I don't think that's the culprit. Alright, so I bit the bullet and just pulled the whole thing out. So still have it connected. Electrically, you can see that copper pipe right here. That's the propane in. So I disconnected that, of course, turned off the propane to the whole rig first. So what I need to do is figure out what part of this mess is causing the problem. I already figured out, there's that sail switch that I took off. And when I turn this on, not a whole lot happens. When I turn on or close the limit switch, there's a hum, so something's going on there. So I believe that maybe the motor isn't working right. So I'm going to try to get this board off so I can test. This looks like the motor lead. I'm going to test to see if we're getting power there. If I'm getting power there, then I'll have to figure out, can I get the motor to spin? Alright, so I disconnected the motor lead. So right here's the motor lead, and this other wire is the power coming in through the main shutoff switch on the unit itself. So let's see if we can test. So that would BLO, blower. So we're going to test when I turn this on if I get a 12 volt signal on this BLO terminal here. 1361. That seems like battery power. And now I should also have 12 volts on the motor, and I do. So I've got this jumper here. So I've basically just feeding the motor directly. So that works. Interesting. Kind of didn't expect that, but that's okay. Motor, the blower motor, back up to the circuit board. that's not it. So the other piece of the puzzle is the limit switch. So, yeah, the limit switch. So that's going to be in the burner area. And the limit switch is normally closed. And when it gets too hot in there, it causes the circuit to break. So it's connected via the thermostat. The sail switch needs to be closed. The limit switch needs to be still closed in order for the whole system to work. And the thermostat is tied into that too. So lots of switches involved here. And so what I'm going to try to do is make so the limit switch is closed. And that's these blue wires here on the circuit board. So that should be a complete circuit when all of these switches are closed. So the thermostat, the limit switch, and the sail switch. So theoretically, if I test the ohms on that, it should be 0, and it's virtually 0. I'm gonna open it, I'm gonna close it. Yep. That's complete. Starting to run out of ideas here. I thought maybe the limit switch was staying open. This may be a new circuit board that we need to just buy. Right, I'm gonna get my ground again here. And check the DC voltage coming in is should be 12 volts. Actually, don't have 12 volts going across there. There's 0. Thought I tested it. Alright, so went down to a local vendor and picked up a new board they had in stock. It's a direct replacement for the board that was in here, although it is a different model number now. So I've connected the fan blower to the blower, BLO, power from the switch is connected to power. This ground is for, well, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's okay. And the main power connector there. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the switch, the sail switch is off. And the blower is working. And then that's going to tell it it's got enough. That tells it to go ahead and start trying the igniter. So that is good to go. I've got to get this beast back in there, restrapped, and get the propane line hooked up again and everything. So we'll see if we can do this. So once all is said and done, I went ahead and connected the ductwork back on, and I used metallic duct tape to hold that onto the furnace. The furnace manual said it needed to be able to withstand 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is just standard metallic duct tape. It's got a higher rating than that, so that should be safe. remember when you're putting your furnace back in, you know, there's on mine there's 2 screws that you can see. One is right there. There's another one on the bottom on the left hand side on the other side of those ducts, and then there on mine there's a strap going across the top. It's standard like galvanized pipe strapping or whatever, just to keep it from bouncing around. So you need to make sure that you get that done too. I've got one more thing on the outside that I'll show you in a second. Now when you're putting this furnace back in, you need to make sure that this exhaust pipe makes it down into, there's a pipe on the inside of the furnace that needs to go into. See if we can get in there, if it's going to focus. Not really. Well, from my experience, I did not have these lined up. This pipe that sticks out the outside and the one that's actually connected to the furnace, I didn't have them lined up. This one sits inside of it. If you don't have this sitting inside of it and it's off kilter, that is not a good situation. It's got a little cover that I'm going to put on here in a moment. There's a number of things that could happen if you don't have this exhaust lined up. Number one, you don't get a ignition in your furnace. Your propane leaks out inside your rig, and then any number of things that can happen with that. Secondly, if you do get ignition, you could have carbon monoxide buildup because the exhaust isn't coming out of the rig, it's staying inside. Even worse, if you do not get it vented properly, you could have a buildup of propane, failure to ignite, and then the igniter could actually ignite that buildup, and you could have an explosion or a fire inside your rig. So you got to be really careful about making sure that you have it vented properly. So the last thing I did to close things up was took that panel that I cut out, got a piece of lumber that I screwed into the right side in there, and then 2 screws in the left side. The left side's the panel, and a few screws on that side to hold it in place. Not too worried about the gap there because in the bottom, because who knows, I may have to get back to this furnace again, and I don't want to have to tear out caulking or anything. Now when you go to fire up the thermostat again, you've got your fuses in and your switch on. It may take a few moments before you get a nice solid flame, but because, well, you had it disconnected, and any propane that was in the end of that hose might be out. So you should hear it click on. The fan will run for maybe 30 seconds, and then you should hear the flame kick on. There you have it. That is a reworking furnace.